Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
So welcome to the Healers Café. And today I have with me Cheryl Ivanisky, and she's a global wellness authority, doctor of holistic medicine, acupuncture. She's a speaker, a coach, and a 5-time best-selling author. She's also a diabetes thriver for over 24 years. So her mission is to help others manage their diabetes with a holistic approach and alternative ways to wellness. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to start just by this question. What actually got you, and I think I know the answer, but into this field and into the field of helping to inform people and give people natural solutions?
I think that's a great question. And something people don't know about me that I was raised on an organic farm. So I was really great. I'm blessed to have grandparents and parents who lived in a rural community in the greater Niagara region. So we had our own fresh organic vegetables and orchards and fruit, which was really great. So I always had that background of natural. Now, as we grow up in the world and receive different education, and I've been traditionally educated as well and licensed and was in that world and still am in that world. But what I realized when I saw people in my family, and then when I was challenged with health challenges, that even though there are so many different approaches with traditional medicine and modern medicine, it really does come back to the basics of our immune system, how we fuel our minds with our thoughts, how we fuel our bodies with our ability to give our body the substance and what it needs to heal. And so when I was being given information that my grandmother had been given for decades about the same condition that I was diagnosed with, which is type 1 diabetes,
Mhm.
and I saw what the future had in store and how it affected so many millions of people and with so many complications. Do you know, right then and there, I took a stand that life could be better and went right back to applying all that I could and learn all that I could about extracting the best of our preventive world and making that the best for me in my life and then sharing that with others.
Yeah, because I mean, for some of the people in the audience, maybe there is a difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So can you explain a little bit how that is different for you and what you're able to do that? Like we know that type 2 can easily be changed with lifestyle and all of that. But type 1, there's a lot of debate about, oh, well, there's nothing else to be done. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking because there's over almost a half a billion people with diabetes, and half of them don't know it. And over 90% of them have type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes starts out as originally metabolic imbalance and insulin resistance that is still within normal but is challenged until it one day will develop into type 2 diabetes if the body's challenged and stressed enough. And because it's so subtle, which is why so many people don't know that they have it until one day, um, that with type 2 diabetes, what we are able to do is you're right. We're absolutely able to reverse it, but we can even prevent it in the first place. So with lifestyle, and it's more than what we eat, and it's more about than just the movements. It's really about our mindset and our sleep and how we're fueling our body with the essential minerals and vitamins that we need that are not always so available in our foods based on our earth these days with all the pesticides and herbicides and lack of minerals in the earth. Now, type 2 diabetes is like I said, it's a challenge within the body, but one that can be adapted to and one that can be, yes, reversed. And that's a lifelong commitment to lifestyle. A type 1 diabetes is an immune system challenge. It's actually where the pancreas stops producing insulin or has such trace amounts that without it, people will die. And so the only way to get insulin is through the skin and through injecting it. There are some inhalers, there are some patches, there's some other technologies that have been worked with, but basically we need to be able to deliver insulin to ourselves because without it, we would not survive. However, I don't want people to mistake taking insulin to stay alive and then living a healthy lifestyle to prevent the complications. So,
Right.
so I don't want people to think it's not a cure. It keeps you alive, and then there's your lifestyle that you can choose and make informed choices about that will either allow you to live a long, prosperous, complication-free future or not.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point to raise. It's like, because there is this doom and gloom. Oh, I have type 1. Well, there's nothing I can do. I'm on insulin. I'm already doing everything. And it's like, not true. There's, it's
True.
like a part of the absolutely necessary components. And like you say, everything else is your choice. And how, the lifestyle you add, the nutrients, what you give your body,
Right.
and getting really informed on what are the foods and the nutrients that you need and what are we deficient on. And and different areas have different deficiencies depending on where you're getting your foods, right? So
Absolutely. And then the other part of that too is also um, for people with type 1 and when we're taking insulin, so many specialists and so many doctors will have something in mind for people and keep adding medications to try to combat high sugars when in fact, high blood sugars um, are a result of an underlying cause, right? So
right.
people with type 1 like myself, we are able to reduce our insulin requirements by 50 to 70%, which I've been able to do. And we can really have optimization and efficiency of our insulin, which is a whole other conversation, but I want people to know that we're able to do that. So we can be empowered by that.
Mm,
Not just empowered. We don't have to add more insulin to get efficiency. We can actually reduce it and get more efficiency.
right. Yeah. No, that's a very good point. And now that we're in a time period where there's, we're told with comorbidities that people are more at risk of, whether it's this virus, the basic flu, anything, it doesn't matter. There
Right.
is, you have to be more careful. Can you explain the link between why it is that people who have diabetes need to really pay attention to what you're saying and to what they can do? And there's many options outside of um, just feeling like a victim and then feeling like scared and feeling like, well, let's just take whatever's on offer, like to get more informed of their real choices that sustains their well-being and their health.
Right. Well, I think that tradition has us locked into uh, a, a, a very narrow way of thinking. And the reason I say that is because I've been through that myself. My family's been through that, and thousands of students that I've taught over the years, and clients in private practice. So when we come from don't do this, don't do that, there's a lack of and a restriction mentality. When in fact, I'd prefer that we look at learning what our triggers are, and I prefer that we look at things that we can do that provide us an abundance of choices. And when we look at it from that perspective, it makes life so much easier. Now, when it comes to making choices, we have to also understand that we need to look at information and expanding our awareness. So anything that we can do to read about what natural solutions can do for us and how they can make an impact. So for instance, when I'm working with people with type 2 diabetes and I'm able to walk them through our 12-week program and they're able to normalize their A1Cs and they're able to say, oh my gosh, I went from a 10.3 to a 5.8. That's amazing, because then they have the natural skill set and they're learning the step-by-step approach to normalizing their blood sugar levels, reducing their medications, and even in many cases, eliminating them and replacing them with those wise choices. And as I said earlier, people with type 2 or type 1 diabetes are able to reduce their insulin requirements and look at things that they can do. Our immune systems in general, and I think this is where you were going with your question, our immune system in general, when blood sugar levels are challenged, there's always an underlying chronic stress and internal inflammation in the body. And it's consistent and it's subtle, but it's always there. So if our blood sugar levels are even slightly elevated over time, that starts to wear on our internal organs, our internal tissues and cells everywhere in the body, whether it's our nerves, to do with circulation and neuropathy, or whether it's our back of our eyes, or no matter where it is. So that internal inflammation is going to challenge our immune system and keep us from healing at our best ability. So I think that's where you were going with your questions. What are some things we can do to boost our immune system? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, exactly. Because one of the big fears is that, and the way it's positioned really is that if you have any of these conditions that compromise your immune system, well, you're done, kind of.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't know, is that true? And I guess I'm questioning that, because I know that there's people listening who feel like, oh, they better rush and do, whatever, without looking into, like, for example, with this, it's new on the market. There's different companies that are doing it. I actually can't even say the word, so we're not going to talk about it. But the genetic agent out there, right? Like, people need to find out, is that going to make it definitely safer, or are they better off working with their immune system? And if so, how to, right? So I guess that's what I just feel like those people are more targeted and so if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yes. So those of us, including myself, family members, because every generation in my family has a form of diabetes. And so when I'm looking at our immune systems in particular, and immune systems of other challenges, I don't really discriminate whether it is arthritis, whether it's a joint condition, whether it doesn't really matter what the challenge is, if it's a hard tissue, soft tissue, internal. So when we're looking at, and we'll say people with diabetes, with a compromised immune system already, with blood sugar levels and often cholesterol levels and blood pressure levels that are higher than normal, our body's working overtime to try to normalize them. So that energy is not going to healing, is going to try, it is trying to it doesn't have that energy to heal, it's being compromised. So for those of us, when we want to look at our immune systems and we're looking at what's happening in current day, with different strands of viruses and different things that are happening today, what is our best defense? Our best defense is giving our immune systems what they need naturally, because when they get what they need naturally, that's when they are able to balance their best. And how do we know that? We know that because it shows up in our testing, it shows up in our energy levels, it shows up in our healing, it shows up in our ability to be able to combat and prevent those unwelcome complications. So how do we do that? We do that with natural solutions that are actually specific to each person. What resonates with one person might be different than another, but I can share a couple of top ones that clients really take benefit from. And
hi, I'm Dr. Manon Bolliger, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for watching these podcasts. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Also, feel free to leave comments and like it. This way, more people get to find out about this work and about other choices for health. So I think it's really important that we all share this information. I have a free gift to you. It's a 7-sequence email that has tips for every day, and it's a little insight about how to live your life when it comes to health. And it's very much built on how I managed to overcome stage 4 cancer and what it took. So I would love you to have this, and thank you once again for listening to these podcasts.
And one of those are choosing foods that the body doesn't have to work to break down as much. So those would be foods that would have a moderate or lower glycemic index, which means they don't raise sugars really high, and they become more aware of foods that do cause high sugars and trigger them. That's number one. So identifying those, and so the quality of food and having our body to work hard to break down the pesticides and the herbicides that it's not designed to do creates more stress on the body. And that's where the difference between the free radical damage and antioxidants come into place. And for the audience, what I mean by that is if our bodies are constantly trying to fight a battle that they can't win, and if they don't have enough fuel and antioxidants like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, antioxidants in natural foods that we have, and in supplements that we can take to combat that, that leaves us even more vulnerable. So looking at natural foods in the best form that we can get them is one of the best defenses. Another great defense is being able to oxygenate our body with the best quality of water that we can possibly get. And that means microclusters of forms of water that are able to actually seep and absorb into our bodies. And those would be highly alkalized forms of water. Another really great benefit there are the supplementations of specific vitamins and minerals that we can take. And I can provide for you a nice list of some of the top 5. I can provide that for the listeners if you'd like. And we can provide a nice free gift to the listeners. So one of those, for instance, would be a vitamin D. Vitamin D is so important for the overall system. And not just that, but did you know that the top percentage of the world around the globe is so deficient in vitamin D?
But I was reading a research that looked at the high death tolls last year in Spain, and the research concluded that they had extremely low vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I'm aware that in the States there's hospitals in certain states that have decided to give people vitamin D, and they've seen that there's a big correlation. And when they've done the death studies, that the autopsies, that the vitamin D levels were low. So
yes.
That's the research. It's hard to get that research, but it's out there.
Well, and then there becomes the whole vitamin D, vitamin K.
Yes, K2, yeah.
And then when you look at the countries around the world, even some of our sunniest climates, all year round, but because people cover their bodies, they're also deficient, which you wouldn't think they would be deficient in vitamin D, but vitamin D is critical. So vitamin D and K together, actually, just
for the absorption,
so the audience knows. But then we're also looking at, and I don't think enough can be said for omega-3. I don't think enough can be said about that. Everyone talks about omega-3, 6, and 9. We get enough 6. We need our 3s.
Yeah.
And so that's super important. When we are looking at ways to alkalize our systems, there's things like apple cider vinegar. There are things that you can put in water to naturally help alkalize them, like the lemon and limes. There are other vitamins and minerals that are specific for people with diabetes. Some of those include chromium picolinate. Some of them include psyllium. Magnesium is so much of the population is deficient as well in magnesium. So there are many things to look at. And then, like I said, antioxidants is a really big part of that. Now, what people may not know, one of the most amazing ways to allow your body to receive antioxidants is in an exercise called grounding.
Grounding, yes. Like actually going barefoot.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's an example of grounding. But I mean, if you look at the floodgates of
Mhm,
antioxidants into your body,
mhm.
we look at grounding, and there are many supportive products that you can buy that help to ground as well. But yes, getting outside, being in nature, actually taking your running shoes and flip flops, that rubber barrier off, and
Right.
actually touching the body
Mhm,
to earth, you
mhm.
know, and spending time in water with the natural elements. But if we don't have access to that, like here, in our winter weathers, it's
Yeah,
pretty
in
tough
Ontario,
up
yeah.
there. But there's other ways that we can do that, and it's amazing to open the floodgates of other ways to get those electrons in, so that we're able to reduce the internal stress on the body. Because when there's free radicals and excesses of them, that's when damage happens.
What have you found to be efficient ways in your experience?
With grounding,
Yeah, if
well,
you don't have access to earth.
yeah, no, and that's a really good point. Well, I'll tell you one thing: living food and living water is
Mhm, mhm.
is huge in the first place. But there are simple things and very relatively inexpensive things that you can do. So, for instance, I remember in meditations as long as 31 years ago with somebody who's very famous now. One of the things that I first learned back then, and I do it now, is when you're running water, you touch your hands to the metal and
Mhm.
you allow that cool to cold water in your hands. And that is a form of grounding. So that's
So,
something
like,
very
so it goes through the faucet and you hold the faucet?
yes, you have one hand on the faucet and you have one hand underneath where the water is. And
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that
No, interesting. Yeah.
so that's
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's logical. Yeah, I never thought of that.
and how simple is that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Mm,
very simple.
mm.
Another form of grounding inside there are things like grounding mats. I actually have
Right.
a cushion
Mhm,
that I sit on, and I have a foot mat that's
mhm,
actually a grounding mat. So I use those every day.
mhm.
So those are other examples. So those are a couple that maybe help the
Right.
audience.
Very good. Yeah. So in conclusion, basically, if you
Okay.
have, if you do have diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, your um, best thing to do is actually to support your health and to support your immune system.
It is, and I think one thing that is, and it's something that I overlooked myself,
Mhm.
and as a high achiever and a go with a big list of
Right.
things to do, in our busy world, and right now I think the world is in a place of reflection, and I think that's not a bad thing. I think getting back to basics is very important, but I think that one thing that people can really do is look at the quality of sleep that they're
Mhm,
getting,
mhm,
because studies also show that having interrupted sleep, having light sleep, having lack of sleep
mhm.
is a contributing factor to the immune system breaking down and leading to all kinds of things, including diabetes. And that chronic stress has led to a 20% increase in the number of people who have diabetes,
Mhm.
amongst other things. But I think if we're looking at natural things and things that we have choices about, and things that we have the most control over, I think having that great quality of sleep is one of them.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, without sleep, your body doesn't go into repair mode, right?
It
It needs to go into that, and like you said, with any kind of stressor or an immune stress, you're in sympathetic dominance,
That's right.
basically, right? So it's very it's hard to switch off unless you actually can switch off, right? So
No, you're
very
right.
important. Yeah.
You're right. So if you look at having to get up a couple times to go to the washroom, that's an intrusion in sleep.
Mhm.
Not getting enough sleep.
Right.
And then when you're looking at what your body fights every day with environmental pollutants out in the world,
Yep.
the products that you use that it has to
Mhm.
break down, the pesticides it has to break down, the cellular and electronic electrosmog it has to deal with, and
Mhm.
everything else. I mean, that's a load that it
Yeah.
was never designed to process. So is it any wonder that the body's under stress,
Mm.
right?
Exactly. No. So actually, I do have one more question. How is it for you with your background and your knowledge, your education, and your focus? How is it to work with either associations that help people with diabetes or doctors that have patients and typically refer them on the general route? Like, is there openness to the idea that we can do more than just rely on insulin, and I forget which organizations they use for dieting, but
I think
somewhat questionable.
well, I think what's really a fair statement to say is I think the approach to collaboration, and I think looking at how we can marry the best of what works is important. Let me explain what I mean. I'm both traditionally licensed and trained, and written many accreditation programs and training doctors across the US and Canada and Middle East. And I look at taking the best of tradition, and I am grateful for traditional medicine that keeps me alive. And then I'm looking at the whole complementary alternative, the natural world, and looking at prevention, because prevention is everything. So when I look at how integrating them works, here's what I find. I find that by extracting what works best and praising and recognizing what works best leaves room for what else is possible. So what I mean by that is when I was talking with my specialists, who I go to and who I'm friends with, and I'm speaking with my medical doctors, they're at a point where they're calling me and they're asking me, my goodness, I've got this patient and this client. I'm not quite sure what to do. They can't get in to see me. They need help. What can you help them? What do you suggest? So it's not a them or us. It's
No.
no. It's becoming much more collaborative, and we also can recognize there is a place for people who require medication. There is a place for that.
Yeah.
But what we need to look at is not looking at medication as a solution, but as a stepping stone towards what else is possible sometimes.
Yeah.
So right now, what do I think about associations and things like that? It's like anything. I think when there's been a train of thought in anything, it's always great to have new information and collaborations or create new possibilities and opportunities and new associations.
Yeah, and I think too, there's a role really to help create new habits. And I know myself, as a naturopathic physician in my clinic, I would say, well, just go shopping, just do the outside rim. Don't buy anything in the middle, and don't buy anything that has dye or something else in it.
Right. Right.
A simplified version, but it was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I found that often patients need a lot more. I don't want to call it hand holding, but it's more like guidance and support and all of the things to implement change. I mean, we all know that changing a habit takes also reinforcement, and it takes time for the body to kind of realize that it feels so much better.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, that makes sense. Why would I, go eat some crazy stuff that puts me behind? So, but I think this is really where doctors, and us included, we don't have the time to really do that part of the work, because we're always diagnosing and prescribing, whether it's natural or not natural. But I think with so many lifestyle conditions, we absolutely need this collaboration with people who are more available on a week-to-week basis, so.
Well, I think you've actually just said something really, really important. I don't think that there has even been a recognition. It's been a missing piece, that we don't have that support and we don't have those programs that we can have clients and people enter into. And I'm going to speak on both levels. I'm going to speak for patients and clients who have these conditions. So the end user, like me, someone with diabetes, and some of the wonderful work that you're doing, and you're kind of parallel in those ways, where we're actually offering wonderful education to health practitioners both traditional and in the energy and the energy world. So what we're able to do is help them now have niche markets and let them be able to serve these people that are looking for help. Those people with diabetes and other challenges, they're looking for support. They don't know where to go because there hasn't been any. So with our efforts, and we're looking at filling that gap, it's like we can offer some of the best solutions, and people just need to find us. And they need to hear and learn that this is a solution for them and it can change their life. So that I believe, yes, that there's been a big missing piece. And I know that with the Academy of Holistic Diabetes Education, that we do offer those programs. And I know that through our 7 Habits to Highly Healthy People, we also offer those programs. But I know the great work that you've been doing with clients and with professionals, that's key. I think we've got more to talk about. Because I think there's a whole group of practitioners and people that are asking for this, and it just hasn't been available.
Yeah. No, I think we can definitely have another conversation.
Yeah,
but I will I will definitely put links under our talk so that people can download more information, whether they're the public or whether it's like you say, the end user or the practitioner that is looking for a way to better support their patients or clients. So thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbolliger.com.